how humans lived in the Middle Ages. In this quiet night, and while you prepare to close your eyes, we will take you on a historical journey, a trip to a time when the morning was not warm and the night was not safe, a time when life was harsh, food was poison, water was an enemy, and justice was a sword that cuts and does not have mercy. Forget what the movies told you about noble knights, dragons, and shiny castles, for the truth was more like an open hell on earth. We dive tonight into the details of just one day only from the life of a simple human in the year 1325, a day that begins in a rotting hut and passes between hunger, labor, and fear, and ends perhaps in death.
As for you, before we begin this deep and calm journey, leave your mark on our channel by hitting the subscribe and like buttons so you can easily find our content next time. And now, take a deep breath, close your eyes, lie down, and let sleep creep in.
The dwelling you're awakening in a rotting hut, atop a mattress of wet straw and fleas, no curtains, no privacy, no comfort. Imagine that you open your eyes in the morning, not to the light of a wide window, nor to the sound of a modern alarm, but to a faint darkness and shy threads of light sneaking through the gaps of damp wooden walls. You are now in the year 1325. You wake up while you are wrapped in a wool blanket, heavy as if it were made of mud. It has not been washed since last winter, and its smell is a mixture of sweat, rot, and smoke. The mattress beneath you is not an ordinary mattress, but a pile of dry, soaked hay filled with small insects that began to attack your skin with the first movement. You try to move, but your back moans as if it were a plank of old wood. Your joints are stiff, as if you slept in the bottom of a cold well. Your age is 22 years, and this in your time is considered full maturity. You are in middle age, even if you do not feel that. You hear from afar the sounds of church bells, deep, slow beats piercing the air, as if they remind you that you are still alive. It is the hour of dawn, but it is not a gentle invitation, but a strict order to wake up and begin the toil. You open your eyes and find that the ceiling above you is of scattered straw. The rain that fell last night is still leaking, and you guess whether that spot is water or something else that came from a nest of rats. The room that you are in is not a room as we know it today. It is one space where everyone lives. You, your mother, and your 4 brothers. There are no features in this hut indicating that it is fit for living. No partitions, no internal walls, no door for privacy. Only walls of decaying wood, and a roof of hay, and a floor of dirt filled with stains and the clear smell. A smell of a mixture that cannot be described accurately, but it includes goat urine, human sweat, food remains, and damp wood smoke. This is the air that you breathe every day. You try to sit and you feel that your knee produces a strange cracking and a sound like the friction of 2 stones. Nothing is broken in your body, you are only worn out. Your feet are bare. You realize immediately that the ground beneath you is either wet from rain or dry and dirty because of one of the chickens that slept inside the house. Chickens, goats, and sometimes small pigs all share the hut with you at night. You hear their sounds moving between the bodies, searching for warmth or crumbs of food. No one is surprised. It is the habit. There are no windows. The light enters from the cracks. There are no curtains, no room for privacy, no time to be alone. Since the moment of your awakening, eyes around you and breaths also around you, and a movement of bodies rising at the same time with you. Your only privacy exists only in your imagination. No place for bathing, no mirror, no lip balm, no enough light to see your face if you wanted. And if you saw it, perhaps you would not recognize it. This moment of awakening is not a moment of contemplating your day as we know it, but it is the beginning of a new struggle with the cold, with hunger, with fatigue, and with everything that might surprise you outside this small wooden door. And with all this, no one is surprised. This is the ordinary morning in medieval Europe. When you rise, you feel your chest to make sure that you have not been infected with a new inflammation, or that you are still breathing normally. Nature's call turns into a nightmare, rotting buckets and waste thrown from windows into the street. Do you feel the need to go to the bathroom? Nowadays, it is an easy matter. You open your bathroom door, press a button and return to your day without thinking. But in the year 1325, the matter is completely different. You are in a small hut that lacks everything that is comfortable or clean, and there is no such thing as a bathroom, no toilet, no sink, no paper, and not even a door that closes. When you wake up in the morning and realize that the natural call has come, an unforgettable, nightmarish journey begins. If you are from the peasants, and they are the majority in that time, then the place of relieving oneself is a wooden bucket placed behind the hut, often full, always with a smell that cannot be described except as unbearable. You head there barefoot on wet ground, either from last night's rain or from something else. You hope not to know what it is. The bucket is broken from the sides, the edges are rough, and inside it is an accumulation of several days of your family's waste. Sometimes there is a wooden cover over it, and sometimes not. Sometimes it is full, and sometimes very full. You sit if you can, and try not to breathe. Flies fly around you, the cold pinches your skin, and the fear of slipping is present in your mind all the time. And when you finish, the strangest part comes. What do you do with what is in the bucket? The answer is simple and disgusting also. You take the bucket, walk to the window or the door of the hut and raise it carefully. Then you shout, "Gardez-le," which is a word taken from Old French, and it means watch out for the water. It is a way to warn those in the street before you empty the contents of the bucket from the window, but no one escapes in the right time. Everyone knows that the street in the village is an open passage for human waste, and food remains and everything you can imagine or do not want to imagine. The streets in the cities and villages resemble rivers of filth, and every house adds fuel to the fire. In some big cities there are public toilets, but do not imagine something resembling what you know today. They are just chambers of wood lined up side by side, and people sit shoulder to shoulder over one hole, without partitions, without water, without ventilation. Talking in them is allowed, but the breath is precious. The smells are unbearable, and the insects are more than the visitors. No paper, but straw or dry leaves, or an old piece of cloth, or even a handful of dirt is used. As for the castles of kings and princes, the situation is a bit finer, only in appearance. In the castles you might find what is called a garderobe, which is a small opening in the wall overlooking the moat surrounding the palace. From it, everything is thrown downwards. A truly clever idea, but unsafe, because some attackers in the time of wars used to sneak into the castles from these openings. Imagine that your enemy enters from the place where you throw your waste. Women were facing greater difficulty, no privacy, no closed places, and not enough time. So many women are forced to relieve themselves in the open at night away from eyes, often in the cold and in fear that a man or an animal or a thief might surprise them. And if you are a child, the situation is simpler or chaotic, as children urinate in corners, in buckets, or even on the floor of the hut, and no one objects to them because no one has an alternative. And with all this, certainly cleanliness was not among the priorities. Water itself is unreliable, and the common idea in that time was that bathing opens the pores of the body and facilitates the entry of disease, and therefore the dirtier you were, the safer you were from the health side, at least in their view. There was a drainage problem. In the villages there are no sewage channels, and there are no cleaning carts. What is thrown remains in the street until the rains pull it, or the earth swallows it, or it accumulates. So smells spread and diseases move, and people get used to it or adapt, not because they love filth, but because they do not know an alternative. For they were born in it and lived in it and died in it. And if you are wondering, did people get used to this life? The answer is yes, in one way or another. But that does not mean they were comfortable, but only they have no choice. And so you begin your day with a quick jump from sleep to a dirty bucket, then to the muddy street, then to a tasteless breakfast. Dignity is postponed for another time, and privacy is a luxury not yet invented. For you are in the Middle Ages, and everything, even relieving yourself, is a small battle against misery. Pottage, which is bread from sawdust, and a light morning beer because the water is contaminated. Welcome to the deadly breakfast. After you woke up from the straw bed and headed to the dilapidated bucket to relieve yourself, you have passed the first battles of the morning. But you are not ready yet to face the day. Hunger began to pinch your stomach, and the cold has no mercy. Now it is time for breakfast, but do not rejoice much, for what awaits you is not food as you imagine it today, but something closer to a silent punishment. In the year 1325, there was no such thing as a healthy meal. There was no variety or elegant tables or warm foods. Breakfast in most of the peasants' houses consists of a dish called pottage, which is a strange mixture of dry breadcrumbs soaked in warm water or diluted milk, and sometimes old onion or bones boiled, since days are added to it. There is no clear taste, no spices, no flavor, not even enough heat, for the wood is scarce and the fire is weak, and the pots are old and cracked. You consume this mixture from a wooden bowl you share sometimes with your brothers, and the spoon is perhaps one for everyone, passed from hand to hand without cleaning, without sterilization, without care. But there is another element in the morning breakfast meal. Beer. Yes, beer. And not because people in the Middle Ages loved drinking, but because the water was contaminated and dangerous to health. In those days, water was not boiled, nor filtered, nor examined. Water in the village often comes from a shallow well, or from a small stream passing beside the farms, carrying with it all kinds of filth. For this, children and adults used to drink light beer, weak in alcohol, made locally and considered safer than water. Everyone consumes it even in the morning because it is simply and less dangerous than a cup of water. Bread was rare in some seasons and petrified like bones in other seasons. It is made from barley flour or a mixture of wheat and cheap flour, and sometimes it is mixed with millet or even with sawdust to increase the quantity. And because the flour was not pure, it contained impurities, small insects, or even ash from the mill. And there was black bread designated for the poor, and white bread for the nobles only. And with all this, breakfast remains an important part of survival, even if it was not delicious, even if it was not filling. You eat it because you know that your day will be long and exhausting and full of work in the field or the forest or the market. And if you do not eat, you will collapse. Imagine beginning your morning with warm beer and bread that resembles mud and a mixture of rotten onion and turbid water. No coffee, no sugar, no cheese, no honey, nothing but staying alive. And if you are lucky, you will eat enough bites to give you energy enough until noon. As for if you are not, hunger will accompany you all day, as the cold, fatigue, and fear that today is the last of your days accompany you. This is the peasant's breakfast in the Middle Ages, not a scene from a fictional novel, but a reality lived by millions of humans every morning for long centuries. So do you still think that returning to the past is an enjoyable idea? Now, after you have eaten what was available, get ready, for the day has not started yet. And in the next chapter, we will discover what it means to wear your clothes in a world that does not know washing and does not know warmth. For the torment has not ended yet. One rotting and stinging woolen robe full of lice and fleas, and no shoes but bare feet in the mud. After you woke up from your wet bed and faced your rotting bucket, then had a breakfast closer to punishment, it is now time to wear clothes. But in the year 1325, wearing clothes is not a simple matter, nor comfortable, nor even warm, but it is another part of the daily torment. You head toward the corner where your clothes are hanging. You do not have a closet, nor a mirror, nor even a hanger. Only an old nail in the wall carrying over it one robe, or maybe two at most, with a faint color and rough texture. You hold the robe. You try to shake it a little to get out the dust or the small rats that might have slept in it at night. The fabric is woolen, but it is not as we know wool today. It is thick, rough, harsh on the skin and causes constant itching, and it has not been washed for weeks. The smells are a mixture of sweat, smoke, urine, and hay, but no one notices, for everyone resembles you and everyone got used to this smell. You put your arms into the sleeves and you feel a small sting. You search quickly and find a louse or two sneaking under the fabric. Yes, lice are part of daily life. Lice, fleas, small insects, all of them live in your clothes and move from one person to another as news moves. And there is no medicine for them, no soap and no enough water to wash the clothes. If you are a man, your robe might be a little long, covering the knees, patched from here and torn from there. And if you are a woman, your robe is longer, heavier and hotter, but it does not hide the pain, and no one owns more than two robes, a robe for work and a clean robe, and it is used in feasts or the church only, and it is also mostly dirty. As for the children, their condition is worse. In many times they do not own suitable clothes. They run barefoot with a torn rag and bellies exposed to the cold or the sun or the insects. As for the infants, they are wrapped in old pieces of cloth or left half naked on the hay. And the shoes, they were a distant dream. The shoe in the Middle Ages is very expensive, for the peasant does not make it by himself, but buys it from the cobbler, and it is made of harsh leather without real soles, and often it is pierced or unsuitable for the size. For this reason many people walk barefoot even in winter in the mud, amidst thorns or stones or ice. Your feet are cracked, ulcerated, black from dirt, and they might carry worms or fungi, but no one cares, for everyone suffers, and there are no socks. For you wear the robe directly on your body, but if you are very rich, which is a rare matter, you might own a simple undershirt made of linen. But the poor do not know this luxury, and there are no trousers as we know them, but strips wrapped around the leg or pieces of cloth tied with rope. The belt is just a thread. The hat is a square piece of wool. Warmth does not exist, and in winter the suffering increases, for the clothes are not changed and the water is semi-frozen, and the body is damp from sweat, and the clothes never dry. Every morning you are forced to wear the same robe in which you slept and worked and sweated, and maybe urinated in without knowing. The edges of the robe scratch you from the inside and destroy your skin slowly, but there is no alternative, for clothes are not for comfort, but for survival. And although everyone looks similar, clothes used to express your social class. If your robe was of a faint and patched grey wool, then you are a peasant. And if it was of a soft fabric or has bright colours, then you are either a merchant or a person of standing. Women were not free in choosing their colours, and the poor man does not dare to wear a colour that does not suit his status. And the lice do not distinguish between rich and poor. Wearing clothes in the Middle Ages does not mean preparing for a beautiful day, but enduring a new layer of pain, enduring the itching, the heat, the smell, and the cold. The robe is heavy and the smell is suffocating and the skin peels, and no one asks you, "Are you comfortable?" For comfort does not exist. And so you begin your day wearing your torment, a layer over hunger and over cold and over filth. You go out of the hut walking in the mire, and your bare feet sink into the cold mud. And in the next chapter, we will move from the outside to the inside, to the mouth. And you went out from your dark hut, beginning your day with something else you might not notice at first. Your mouth. A mouth that does not know cleanliness and does not know medicine, but knows pain, smell, and collapse. No brush, no paste, no dentist, only prayers and unending pain, and pains that turn into a deadly fever. After you wore your rough clothes, the mouth in the Middle Ages was not only a tool for speech or eating, but it was a constant source of pain, foul odours, and slow death. There is no such thing as a toothbrush, no paste, no regular visits to the doctor, and not even an idea about prevention or oral care. People did not know that bacteria cause decay. They did not know what tartar or gingivitis is, and the bad breath resulting from stomach problems. Rather, they did not understand why teeth begin to erode, and why some of them fall out suddenly, or why the cheek swells and fever begins. All of that was considered an affliction from God or just bad luck. If you wanted to clean your mouth in the year 1325, then you own one option: a tree branch. Yes, a small branch, usually from the miswak, beech or oak tree, peeled from its tip until it becomes as if it were a rough brush. You pass it over your teeth while you try to get rid of food remains or the mud stuck between the molars. But this branch does not sterilize, does not change, and is not kept in a clean place, and it is used until it cracks or rots. And if you felt pain in the teeth, then there is not much for you to do. The story begins with a slight sting, then turns into an unbearable pain, then swelling in the cheek, difficulty in eating, and heat in the head. But no doctor in the village, no medicine, and no painkillers. What happens after that? The barber comes, or the priest, or the butcher sometimes, and performs the extraction of the molar. No anesthesia, no clean tools, only metal pliers or an old knife, or even a thread tied to the door. Two men hold you from behind. You open your mouth by force, then the molar is uprooted in a moment of unforgettable screaming. And if you are lucky, the bleeding stops. And if you are not, bacteria enter your blood and poisoning begins. Foul breaths were a natural thing. Everyone has a bad mouth odor, and not because of food only, but because of the rot inside the mouth. Imagine living with broken teeth, or a half-visible molar, or a wound in the gum that never heals. Then you are forced to eat the hard bread, or drink the sour beer. And there were no mirrors, or good lighting to see what happens in your mouth. Everything you know comes from the pain, and every unexplained pain is attributed to evil spirits or to divine punishment. Sometimes wine or vinegar is used as a mouthwash, but the result is temporary and might lead to burning the wounds instead of healing them. Also, some people put ash or salt inside their mouths believing it is beneficial, but it was exacerbating the pain in most cases, and if you lost most of your teeth, this is very natural. For many people, especially after the age of 30, they were almost toothless. They speak with difficulty, eat mashed food, and live with sunken mouths that bleed and pain them night and day. And because medicine was not advanced, the infection resulting from an abscess in the molar used to cause death. Yes, a simple decay might end your life. And it was not rare. There were primitive attempts to install wooden or bone teeth, but they were painful and ineffective and fall out quickly, and only the rich could use them. As for the poor, they used to swallow their pain in silence and continue their lives with broken teeth or bleeding gums, or a mouth that knows only torment. And despite all this, no one thought that the mouth has a connection to health, for cleanliness was not among the prevailing concepts, and pain was part of life, not something strange. In this time, the mouth was not a means for smiling, but it was a battlefield. Every day you begin it with a new war against pain, smell, and rot. And if you did not die because of food, you might die because of a small molar. And so you walk to your work and your mouth throbs with pain, you swallow a bite with difficulty, and you speak while you puff your breath and swallow the blood that comes out of your gum. All this, and you have not started your work yet. In the next chapter you will enter into the fields where there is no mercy, no rest, and no end to fatigue. Muddy fields, primitive tools, a broken back, and no holidays. Men, women, and children, everyone works until the last breath. After a breakfast that barely staves off hunger, and after you wore your heavy robe and your mouth pains you, the real day begins. Work. But the word work in the Middle Ages does not mean a job or an office or specific hours, but it means a whole life of fatigue, from morning until sunset, and sometimes after it. Most people in the year 1325 were peasants, living in the countryside and farming the land. But the land is not theirs. It is the property of the feudal lord or the church, and they only work in it in exchange for survival. The work begins with the first light, even before sunrise. You go out of the hut, dragging your feet in the mud, and go to the fields. The air is cold, stinging the face, and the ground is wet, heavy, and full of holes. No one waits and no one helps you. Men plough the land with primitive wooden tools. Sometimes they use an ox if found, and if not, the man himself becomes the ox. Women do not rest. They collect wood, carry water, feed the animals, and cook in black pots over the fire. And the children no time for play. Since the age of 5 they are asked to work. They run after the chickens, collect the eggs, clean the pens, and carry baskets. There is no wage, no time out, and no rest. You work because if you do not, you will starve, and hunger is a killer. In the summer, the heat is unbearable. Under the direct sun, your head boils and your skin cracks. And there are no hats, no creams, and no cold water. And in the winter, the cold freezes the fingers. The feet sink into the mire. The wind slaps your face and your hands feel nothing. But the work does not stop. The planting does not wait, and the Lord does not have mercy. And if you get sick, you must work. If you bleed, you must work. If you are a pregnant woman, you work until the day of birth, and maybe hours after it. Imagine that you spend more than 12 hours a day in the fields. You kneel, dig, cut, plant, harvest without modern tools. Only a sickle, or a wooden shovel, or an old knife. Your back breaks, your hand bleeds, your feet swell. And no one asks you, are you okay? And the field alone is not the work. In the evening there is cleaning the hut, repairing the roof, making ropes, drying food and raising children. Even at night the work does not end and there is no holiday. The only day in which you do not work is Sunday, but it is not for rest, but for going to the church, bowing and listening for long hours, then returning home to work again. Some peasants used to serve in the workshops of craftsmen, or in mines, or in building churches, and these professions were not easier, but more dangerous. It was possible for the stones to collapse over them, or their fingers to be cut, or they would be blinded by iron fragments. And because everything is made manually, people had to produce by themselves everything they needed, from baskets to wood, to ropes, to butter, to clothes, to knives. All that requires time, effort, and patience, and no one helps you. Sickness does not exempt you from work, and old age does not protect you. Even the elderly work until they fall to the ground, then they are buried. And because the food is weak and the body is exhausted, the body's used to collapse quickly. The back bends, the knees pain, and the eyes lose their light. But no one stops. Work is life, and stopping is death. For this, no wonder that many were dying in the fields or falling on the roads or suffering from nervous breakdowns or chronic diseases. But no one cares. For tomorrow, someone else will come to take your place. This is work in the Middle Ages, a work that does not end, a work that tortures the body and kills the soul. No dignity in it, and no reward, only temporary survival. And in all seasons of the year, work will not be your only enemy, but it will be the weather itself that has no mercy on anyone. A deadly winter, a suffocating summer, houses without insulation, and the danger of freezing or poisoning from the heat exists throughout the year. In the Middle Ages there was no favorite season, for winter is an enemy and summer is an enemy, and spring and autumn are just quiet moments before the storm. Every season carries with it a new pain, and nothing in your simple life can ease this cruelty. No heater, no fan, no air conditioning, only your body, your damp woolen robe, and a house of mud and wood that protects from nothing. In winter, the tragedy begins. The cold winds enter from every hole in the walls. The roof leaks water, and the windows, if found, do not close tightly. The ground is muddy and wet, frozen sometimes, and you sleep on the straw without a blanket and without a pillow. The snow accumulates, but it does not mean beauty or joy, but it closes the roads and prevents you from reaching wood or food, or even the toilets. And if you go out, your bare feet freeze, and if you stay, your breath freezes in your chest. The toes turn into blue lumps, the nose runs without stopping, and the chest produces a strange whistling. You sit near the fire if found, but the smoke chokes you and fills your eyes with tears. As for in summer, the heat is unbearable. You work in the fields and the sun strikes your head like a hammer. No hat, no umbrella, and no cold water. All you own is your sweat that does not stop. Your wet clothes are heavy, sticking to the skin and causing skin rashes. At night the weather does not cool down. You sleep and the flies fill the hut, and the mosquitoes pinch you, and insects crawl on your body. Sometimes the heat intensifies until the livestock choke in the pens, the chickens die and the crops dry up. And if you did not die from the heat, you might die from hunger after everything you planted has burned. Spring is beautiful, but short moments. The earth blooms and life returns to the trees, but the rain overflows and the rivers flood the roads. The mud houses melt, the walls fall, and the roof collapses over your head. And the mud has no mercy. You walk in it up to the knees, the wood gets lost in it, and the tools sink in it. As for autumn, it is the season of anxiety. You race time to harvest what you planted. If you are late, the storms eat it, and if you hurry, your exhausted body gets sick. Autumn reminds you that winter is coming, and that the cold death is approaching, and no one knows anything about thermal insulation. The houses are built of mud, wood, and straw, leaking heat in winter and hiding it in summer, and the small hut does not endure strong winds or heavy rain. Suddenly, you find yourself sleeping under the sky after the roof of your house fell, and no one owns a change of clothes. In summer you sweat until you drown, and in winter you cool until you freeze, and there is no shoe. Your feet are bare in the mud, in the ice, over the stones and under the rain. And sickness always comes with the change of seasons. Colds turn into pneumonia. Fever comes with the first drop of rain. And wounds do not heal because of the humidity. Even the children do not endure this harsh change. They get sick quickly. They die in silence. And because food is little and the body is weak, you do not own immunity. You are affected by everything, by the heat, by the cold, by the rain, by the winds. No medicine, no covers, no warm drinks, and no safe shelter. And so, every year, the same cycle. A winter that freezes you, a summer that burns you, a spring that drowns you, and an autumn that warns you. No break, no rest, no mercy. In this world, the weather was not something you talk about while sipping coffee, but it was a permanent enemy, coming in every form and at every time, and no one is able to stop it. And so you live year after year, under the mercy of the sky, the mud, the cold, and the sweat. Rain or ice will not be the enemy, but water itself. Water which is supposed to be a blessing, but in the Middle Ages it was the beginning of every curse. Bathing is rare and dangerous, and cleanliness is considered a satanic heresy. Only beer saves you. In the time of the Middle Ages, water was not a source of life, but it was a cause of death. What seems to us today a natural matter, a cup of cold water, a refreshing bath, washing hands, was in the past among the most dangerous things that you could do. Water was not pure, it was not clean, and it was not safe. It carried inside it all kinds of disease without you seeing it. The rivers, streams, and wells, all of them were contaminated. There were no purification stations, no filters, and not even knowledge of germs. People used to drink from the same place where clothes are washed, where filth is thrown, and where corpses are washed sometimes. Bacteria live in it, parasites swim in it, and the result, diarrhea, fever, vomiting, dehydration, and slow death. And for this, people used to fear water, avoid it, and replace it with beer. Yes, beer. Even children used to drink light beer in the morning because it is safer than drinking a cup of water. Beer is boiled during its preparation, which kills some germs, and therefore it was considered clean compared to water. But it was not healthy, and it did not quench the real thirst. As for bathing, it was almost among the taboos. People were not bathing except for very rare times, once a year, maybe, sometimes less. And it was believed that hot water opens the pores of the body, and disease enters from it. Therefore they used to fear bathing. And they do not encourage it. And even if someone wanted to bathe, the matter was not easy. There are no bathrooms, there are no running waters. You have to draw water from the well and heat it with fire, then fill buckets and wash in a barrel or a wooden tub. And if you were poor, and this is the case of most people, you will not even own a bucket of your own. Maybe you use the river, but you risk drowning or sickness, or that the neighbors see you and shout that you committed an indecency. The church, for its part, was not encouraging frequent bathing, but it was encouraging the purity of the soul, not the purity of the body. And it was said that whoever cares much about his body is hiding something. As for clothes, they were washed very little, and it was believed that frequent washing weakens the fabric. And so everyone used to wear the same robe for months. It gets dirty, insects gather on it, sweat sticks to it, but it remains with them night and day. Washing hands was not a common thing nor understood originally. You eat with your hands, work with your hands, clean your shoes, and feed the animals, and no one expects from you to wash your hands after all that. And so water becomes a source of danger, an invisible enemy, something you avoid, not search for, but you need it. You need to drink, to wash, to clean your wounds, to cook. So what do? You drink and hope to survive. You wash in a hurry and pray not to get sick. You clean the wound with turbid water and wait for the miracle. And all this makes a simple thing like a cup of water a cause for the death of thousands, especially children, the sick, and pregnant women whose bodies cannot endure the infection, so they die within days. And because people did not know the real reason, the explanations were religious or superstitious. Enchanted water, a curse from the demons, anger from God. No one knew that the cause is small bacteria that are not seen, smelled, or heard, but they are deadly. In the Middle Ages, you did not have to die by war or hunger or punishment. It is enough to drink a cup of water at an unsuitable time. And in the next chapter you will discover that even if you survived hunger, water and cold, medicine in that time was not a profession of rescue, but sometimes a means of torture. In the Middle Ages, if you got sick, you were in real trouble. Not because disease was rare, but because medicine as it is known today did not exist. No trained doctors, no modern hospitals, no effective medicines. Rather superstitions, blood, screaming, and a little bit of luck. People did not understand how the body works. They did not know that there are viruses or bacteria. They thought that disease comes from evil spirits, or from the anger of God, or because of foul air they call miasma. The basis in their understanding of medicine was what is known as the theory of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And it was believed that human health depends on the balance of these humours inside the body. If one of them increased, you get sick, and if the balance was disturbed, you might die. Therefore, the treatments were strange, painful, and often deadly. The most famous method of treatment: bloodletting. Bloodletting means that they open a vein for you with a blade and take out the spoiled blood from your body. They might take out a cup or more, and they might repeat the process every day until your body weakens completely. In some cases they used leeches, yes, which is a type of parasitic waterworms they place alive on your skin to stick to you and suck your blood, and they think that the leech restores balance to your body. As for the fever, they used to try to cool you or heat you according to the type of fever. And if you were afflicted with poisoning, they might ask you to vomit until you empty your stomach. And sometimes they give you herbs that cause diarrhea because they think that what is inside you is evil that must come out. But what about the pain? There are no painkillers, no anesthesia, and no sterilization. Every operation was performed while you were in full consciousness. Your finger is cut, you watch it being cut. Your wound is opened, you feel it being torn, and it is sewn with a cloth roll saturated with ash or honey. And if the wound was deep, or there were abscesses, Hot iron is used. They cauterize you with fire, literally, not for healing, but to close the wound and prevent the blood from bleeding. Doctors were not the most experienced, but the most memorizing of old traditions. Many of them were monks or students in monasteries, relying on old books from the time of the Greeks and Romans and adding to them what they see of dreams or visions. And if the treatment did not work, they resort to prayer, repentance, or exorcism. Some patients were not considered patients but possessed, and they are tied with chains or whipped to expel the devil from inside them. As for women, they were in constant danger. So if she complained of a constant headache or sudden fatigue or panic attacks, it might be thought that she is a witch, and a new chapter of torture begins with her that has no connection to medicine but to superstition and fear. And the hospitals were monasteries or dilapidated rooms inside the church. There are no clean beds, no care, and no tools. Patient over patient, blood on the floor, and screaming in the corners. And many people preferred death in their homes over being moved to what is called the house of healing, for whoever entered it rarely came out alive. In the Middle Ages, disease was treated with hope, not with science, and with the knife, not with medicine, and with prayer, not with analysis. And if you got sick one day, you will become very merciful to everyone who died in silence, because at least he did not try medicine as people knew it in those days. In the Middle Ages, faith was not a personal matter. Religion filled every moment of your life, from the moment of your awakening until your sleep. The church was not only a place for prayer, but it was a real authority, watching, holding accountable, and punishing. On the morning of every Sunday, you must go to the church, not because you want to, but because everyone goes. And if you were absent, the priest might visit you, and you might be recorded in the registers of the disobedient. The church was not a place for rest, but a place for fear. Fear of error, of thinking, of doubt. Every behavior outside of what pleases the Lord might be interpreted as a rebellion. You knew that everything that happens to you is a punishment from heaven. If you got sick, you are a sinner. If your son died, it is the will of the Lord. If your family went hungry, then God is punishing you for sins you do not know. There was no room for doubt or questioning. Whoever asks much is branded with heresy, and whoever is suspected is dragged to the ecclesiastical courts. And in those courts, there is no chance for survival. Heretics are whipped, imprisoned, and sometimes burned. It is enough for someone to see you while you whisper something in the shadow until the doubt begins. And a person might be imprisoned because he said that the rain was late. Women were in a harder situation. The woman who talks much might be a witch. She who heals with herbs is a witch. She who dreams strange dreams is a witch. Faith was not love, but a heavy duty that forces you to confess your mistakes every week. Even if you did not have mistakes, you must confess something, otherwise you will be accused of pride. Sometimes the priest turns into a spy, hearing from people and collecting stories and conveying them to the church. And the church might punish you with social isolation or force you to be silent in the market. There was something called excommunication. This means that you are prevented from everything. No one sells you bread, no one talks to you, and no one approaches you. You become as if you were a living dead. The hardest part of the matter is that you do not know when you err. A long look, an unsuitable word, being late for prayer, or even a disturbing dream, all of them might be a cause for the anger of the church. Religion was not only for God, but a tool used for control, and everyone had to fear, obey, pray, and be silent. In the Middle Ages, a woman was not just a citizen, but she was often treated as if she were nothing. From the moment of her birth, a long series of suffering begins that does not end except with death, or maybe much before it. The girl is born inside a narrow hut between the screams of a tired mother, without the presence of a professional midwife or a doctor. The birth itself was a great danger, and death during it was very common. And even if the mother survived, mostly she would be infected or bleed until she dies. As for the born girl, she is often received with a look of disappointment because she is simply not a boy. The girl begins to grow amidst misery among hungry siblings, an exhausted mother, and a father often absent in the fields or in the tavern. No schools, no books, and no games, only hard domestic work since childhood. Washing clothes in the cold river, collecting wood, cleaning the house and cooking the little food. Then, at an age not exceeding 12 or 13, the girl is married, not out of love nor desire, but a deal. The groom is much older than her, and often she has seen him once only. Her opinion is not taken, nor is she given a chance to object. And if she resisted, she is rebuked or beaten or accused of disobedience. After marriage, the hardest journey begins. The woman is forced to give birth quickly. Pregnancy comes one after the other, and birth without care or sterilization. Every birth is an adventure, blood, pain, screaming, and sometimes the end. The tired body has no mercy. After days only from birth, the woman is forced to work again in the house, in the field, or in the market. No rest, no tenderness, and no support. And if her child dies, she is blamed, and if she gets sick, she is neglected, and if she dared to complain, she is accused of being rebellious. A woman does not own herself, nor her decision. She cannot divorce, nor manage money, nor even say no. And if she showed excessive intelligence or rebelled or treated a patient with herbs, soon she is accused of witchcraft. The accusation of witchcraft was not just a word, but a death sentence. It is enough for her neighbor to suspect her or her husband to accuse her, to be dragged from her house and thrown into prison. Then comes the trial without a lawyer and without witnesses, only a priest and an angry judge, and often a screaming crowd. She is tortured to confess and admit, and is burned in the end in the square in front of everyone. All of that was justified in the name of religion, or morals, or divine law. But the simple truth is that the woman did not own the right to life. Not all women were suffering to the same degree. Some of them in the rich classes lived a less harsh life, but even there, they were just tools for marriage and heirs. They were not free. The Middle Ages were not only the time of castles and knights, they were also the time of silence and fear for women. No voice, no safety, and no rights. Every day was a battle, and every battle was without a weapon. To be a woman in the Middle Ages is to be a victim from the beginning, without a chance, without a choice, and without an exit. And that was natural in the eyes of society, and in the eyes of the law, and in the eyes of religion also. This is the other face of hell, the hell that the woman lived every day and every night without stopping, without hope. Life was not a long journey as we know it today. No one expected to live until the age of 60 or 70. In fact, reaching 30 was considered an achievement, and reaching 40 was a rare miracle. Children were the first victims. Out of every 10 children born, perhaps 2 or 3 survive. The reason is simple but deadly: diseases, hunger, pollution, and cold. No vaccines, no medical care, no enough nutrition. A small child gets infected with fever, then death comes to him in a day or two. A mother who does not own milk, and an infant crying until he falls silent forever. Death was very close in every corner, in houses, in roads, in fields, and even in churches. There were no hospitals in the modern sense, but dark rooms and beds of straw and priests reading prayers on the hope that you survive. But disease was not the only killer. Hunger was a daily ghost. 1 year of drought was enough to shatter a whole village. Crops do not grow, animals die, and people eat roots or bark, which is the outer crust that coats tree trunks, or anything that keeps them alive for an extra day. Some were selling their children for a loaf of bread, and others throw the bodies of their neighbors in the forest, so they do not spoil the air in the narrow houses. Wars also were not far. Even the peasants who have no connection to politics or kings were dragged by force to the battlefronts. There is no training, no plans, only an axe or a spear and orders to kill. The enemy was not only the other soldiers, but also the diseases that ravage the camps, the hunger that weakens the bodies, and the fear that has no mercy. Women were in constant confrontation with death, especially during childbirth. In a time that knew neither anesthesia nor cleanliness, every birth was a battle between life and death. The woman bleeds until she loses consciousness, or gets infected with puerperal fever, or the fetus dies in her womb. And if she survived, she returns to work after 2 days as if nothing had happened. Everything surrounding the individual in that time was reminding him of death. The bells that ring at every funeral, the clergy who repeat the talk about the end of the world, the books that depict that death comes in the form of a skeleton dancing over the heads of people. Even the graves were not places for rest. They were shallow, dug quickly and covered with a little dirt, sometimes opened again, and a new body is buried in them over an old body. No names, no tombstones, no flower placed on the grave, only silence and a smell of death that does not go away. Death was not a sudden end, but it was a daily companion, passing by you while you eat, and while you work, and while you pray. A constant feeling that you might not see tomorrow's sunrise. And this feeling with time did not surprise people, but became part of life. Life in the Middle Ages was not long, but it was heavy, loaded with fear, hunger, fatigue, and repeated farewell. And whoever lived until he grew old was not living healthily. His teeth were missing, his back bent, his sight weak, and his voice faint. Just a shadow of a human who lived more than he was supposed to. In the end, greatness in that time was not for those who lived a long life, but for those who survived just another day. When we think of the Middle Ages, A picture of a noble knight on a white horse carrying a shining sword and wearing a bright armor comes to our minds. We imagine romantic castles and beautiful ladies wearing silk robes and soft music playing in the background. But the truth was furthest from this rosy dream. What we saw in movies and stories was a beautification of a dark and bitter reality. Knights were not always noble. Many of them were just men of violence living on looting and plundering and practicing their authority by force, not by honor. They had the right to impose taxes on the peasants and punish them in humiliating ways if they did not pay on the scheduled time. Some of them were known for their brutality, not their courage, and killing, rape, and terror were means of imposing order. As for the castles, they were not always charming places. Many of them were cold, damp, and unjust inside. Life in them was difficult even for the kings themselves. The food was simple, the smells were suffocating, and the servants were treated as if they were machines. There was no privacy, no cleanliness, and not even comfort. The stone walls isolated sound and light, but they did not isolate diseases, nor screaming, nor the biting cold in winter. Women in this golden age did not enjoy a romantic life. In fact, they were treated as properties. Marriage was not about love, but about money and alliances. A girl at the age of 12 might be married to a man in the 40s only because her father wants land or protection, and if she objected, no one hears her voice. Love as we imagine it today was rare, and the beautiful stories we watch in movies were just imagination. Even the poets and musicians whom we think lived a high artistic life were often poor, roaming the roads, asking for sustenance and singing for whoever pays. Creativity was not sacred but a means for survival, and they had to please their masters, not to tell the truth. Daily life, even in palaces, was not charming. No bathrooms, no running water, no doctors who understand diseases, and no diverse food as we see it in cinematic banquets. The plague did not distinguish between noble and poor, and war was knocking on all doors from the huts to the highest towers, and even the legend of courtly love where the knight loves a married woman and protects her with honor was nothing but a literary trick. In reality, the knight expected to get what he wanted, and that his services would be rewarded with something tangible, whether it was money or a body. There was no such thing as pure love outside the scope of marriage, but relationships were complex and subject to law, church, and custom. What is courage? Sometimes, yes, it was found, but courage does not hide the filth, nor hunger, nor fear. It does not hide the screaming of women during birth, nor the crying of children as they are dragged to the fields, nor the exhausted faces of peasants from work without reward. Some of the paintings we see today show the nobles dancing or eating, but they do not tell us how their legs were full of sores or how the fleas were jumping from their robes. They do not tell us about the diseases that spread behind the decorated walls, nor about the corpses that are thrown secretly outside the castles when the plague falls. So the romance that surrounds the Middle Ages today is nothing but an illusion. The truth is more difficult and more painful. Those ages were a time of sweat, fear, and near death. There was no background music and no happy ending. Life in that time was not a love story, but a story of survival.